There's a kind of discipline so severe, so precise, so cold in its execution, that even grown men with years of experience hesitate at its presence. It's not the discipline of shouting, nor the discipline that relies on brute strength or loud authority. It's something subtler, something deeper, something that radiates from a man who has conquered himself long before conquering anything external. It's the discipline that transforms an ordinary human being into someone the chaos itself respects. Soldiers have a name for it: fear-level discipline. Fear-level discipline doesn't come from fear, it creates fear. It's the quiet pressure that enters a room before the man does, the almost unseen gravity that makes others straighten their posture without knowing why. It's the lingering sense that the person standing in front of you has walked through storms you couldn't imagine and learned to remain calm in places where most minds would collapse. This discipline doesn't shout, doesn't posture, doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to. Its presence alone alters the environment. This type of discipline is not built in battlefields, nor in heroic moments that civilians like to romanticize. It's forged in silence, in repetition, in discomfort, in the invisible corners of a man's life. It's a forging process so unforgiving that most people will never experience even the first layer of it. They never wake up early enough, never face themselves honestly enough, never stay consistent long enough to understand what true internal discipline feels like. But soldiers know. They know because they don't have the option of quitting when they feel tired. They don't have the luxury of waiting for motivation. They learn to master themselves because survival depends on it. Fear-level discipline is the transformation of a man into his sharpest possible form. The kind of form where instincts no longer dictate choices, emotions no longer interrupt clarity, and external chaos no longer influences internal stability. To civilians, this seems extreme. To soldiers, it's necessary. It's the reason some men walk into hostile situations with a stillness that confuses everyone around them. It's the reason they can endure freezing nights, exhausting marches, overwhelming pressure, and moments where everything collapses except the mission. This discipline is not loud, it is not dramatic, it simply is. And the truth is simple: no civilian lifestyle demands this level of discipline, so most civilians never develop it. Every civilian imagines a soldier's battle happening on open ground, under fire, surrounded by adrenaline and noise. But experienced soldiers will tell you that the real battle begins far earlier, long before any mission, long before the first step outside. The real war starts in the dark, before sunrise, inside the one battlefield every man carries with him: the mind. The invisible war is not marked by explosions or gunfire. It's marked by hesitation, laziness, excuses, impulses, and the constant temptation to choose comfort over growth. And for soldiers, this internal battle is relentless. It appears the moment they open their eyes, when the body says, "Stay in bed," when the mind whispers, "You've done enough." When fatigue, doubt, and resistance roll in like fog, blurring every intention and every purpose. Most people surrender to that fog. They call it being tired. They rationalize it as taking a break. They accept the defeat because no one is watching and no immediate consequence exists. But soldiers with extreme discipline understand a brutal truth: if you let your mind win in small battles, it will destroy you in big ones. Fear-level discipline begins when a man decides to stop losing the invisible battles. He refuses to negotiate with weakness. He refuses to let comfort dictate his actions. He wakes up when he said he would wake up. He trains when the weather punishes him. He pushes when his muscles beg him to stop. He executes tasks with precision, even when no one is around to check. This is where the transformation starts, in those private moments nobody else will ever see. The invisible war is psychological warfare against your oldest enemy, your own instincts. Instincts designed for comfort, preservation, ease, routine. But a soldier doesn't have the luxury of following those instincts. He replaces them. He rewires them. He takes the raw material of his human nature and disciplines it until it obeys purpose instead of emotion. In this internal arena, discipline is not glamorous. It's repetitive, boring, uncomfortable, and merciless. Every morning is a new test, Every moment of hesitation is another enemy push. Every weakness exposed is a breach in the perimeter. And slowly, through thousands of repetitions, the soldier builds a mind that no longer avoids difficulty, but confronts it. This invisible war is the birthplace of fear-level discipline. It's where a man discovers that the enemy inside him is far more persistent than any enemy outside. It's where he learns that the battle he fights before dawn determines every victory that comes after. A civilian might see only the uniform, the posture, the calm presence. But behind that is a man who has defeated himself countless times. A man who wakes up earlier than comfort allows, pushes harder than excuses permit, and stays committed longer than motivation lasts. That is why he moves differently. That is why he appears unshakable. Because long before he mastered any external skill, he mastered the hardest opponent he would ever face, himself. In the military, greatness doesn't appear in moments of glory. It doesn't rise during missions, victories, or adrenaline-filled operations. It's built quietly in the repetition of rituals so strict that most civilians would quit within a week. Fear-level discipline is forged not in explosions, but in routines. Merciless, monotonous, demanding routines that sculpt the mind long before they sculpt the body. A soldier wakes not when he wants, but when he must. There is no negotiation with the alarm, no 5 more minutes, no soft pillow pulling him back into comfort. The day begins before the world lights up, long before the average person even realizes morning has arrived. It begins in darkness, where excuses have the loudest voice. And every morning the disciplined soldier crushes that voice until it becomes silent. Training doesn't begin when conditions are ideal. It begins precisely because they aren't. Cold air that bites the skin, rain that turns ground into mud, wind that numbs the fingers, none of these are obstacles. They're catalysts. They're the elements that separate the disciplined from the fragile. A civilian sees bad weather and postpones effort. A soldier sees bad weather and trains harder because reality doesn't offer perfect conditions, and neither does war. Every piece of gear is arranged with near-obsessive precision. Every buckle, strap, pouch, and tool has a place, and that place is respected. Not because someone might inspect it, but because the ritual itself builds clarity, patience, and readiness. A single misplaced item could cost seconds. Seconds could cost a life. This reality shapes behavior in ways civilians can't comprehend. Order becomes instinct. Preparation becomes reflex. The mind is sharpened through the same discipline. Reading, drills, briefings, repetitions of strategy and protocol. None are optional. None are done when there's time. They're embedded into the rhythm of the day. The soldier doesn't train only his strength. He trains his attention, his decision-making, his ability to remain calm under chaos. Over time, this consistency becomes identity. Most people live by emotion. Soldiers trained in this ritual live by standard. Standards that don't drop when they are tired. Standards that don't crumble when they are discouraged. Standards that don't care how they feel. The ritual demands performance regardless of motivation. And that's the reason it transforms men. Because a man who can win without motivation is a man who is already operating at a level few even attempt to reach. Fear-level discipline is created through these unseen rituals. The early mornings, the cold training, the meticulous structure, the unbreakable consistency. No civilians witness it. No applause is given. No validation is offered. But this is where the indomitable are separated from the ordinary. This is where soldiers learn that discipline isn't something you show, it's something you become. The strongest soldiers aren't the ones who speak loudly, boast proudly, or carry themselves with visible force. Those men are predictable. Their strength depends on being seen. But the soldier shaped by fear-level discipline is different. He carries a quietness that unsettles people, a stillness that demands respect without ever asking for it. He is the man who watches before he speaks, listens before he reacts, and calculates before he moves. This silence isn't emptiness, it's control. It's the result of years spent in environments where fear is common, chaos is normal, and noise solves nothing. Over time, the soldier learns to stop reacting emotionally. Panic becomes foreign. Anger becomes a signal rather than a trigger. Impulse is replaced by analysis. The mind becomes a tool, sharpened by discipline, unaffected by external storms. There's a heaviness to this kind of presence. Not weakness, weight. A burden that comes from knowing things most people don't know, from having seen what most people never will, from carrying memories that don't fit casual conversation. This burden doesn't break him, it deepens him. It turns him into someone who understands more than he speaks, notices more than he says, and feels more than he shows. Civilians misinterpret this silence. Some see it as intimidation, others see it as arrogance, but those who've lived real conflict recognize it immediately. It's the posture of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, someone who has faced enough internal and external battles to know that ego is a luxury and calmness is a weapon. Fear-level discipline creates a man who doesn't react, because reacting gives away power. Instead, he responds, slowly, intentionally, deliberately. He chooses his words, chooses his movements, chooses his energy. Everything he does is calculated not from fear, but from mastery. This discipline doesn't need to be shown. It doesn't chase recognition. It doesn't perform. It simply exists. And its existence alone is powerful enough to change the atmosphere of a room. The silent burden becomes part of the soldier's identity. A weight carried not with sorrow, but with responsibility. Responsibility to remain stable when others shake, to remain level when others lose control, to remain disciplined even when no threat is visible. This is the kind of strength civilians rarely understand, but other soldiers feel it instantly. It's the unspoken acknowledgement. This man has fought his mind and won. And that victory creates a depth, a quiet gravity, a sharpened presence that doesn't need volume to be felt. There comes a point where discipline stops being a habit and becomes something far more dangerous. When a man lives with strict routines for long enough, when he silences impulses again and again, when he masters the invisible war and embraces the daily ritual, something clicks inside him. Discipline no longer feels forced. It becomes instinct. It becomes strategy. It becomes a weapon. This is the level where patience turns into power, where the ability to wait becomes more dangerous than the ability to strike. Think of a sniper, not just the rifle, but the mind behind it. A sniper isn't defined by the shot he takes, but by the hours he waits before taking it, the calm breathing, the stillness under pressure, the total surrender of emotion in favor of accuracy. Fear-level discipline produces this same mindset. A man who doesn't rush, doesn't panic, doesn't break formation mentally even when others collapse around him. He knows that reacting is weakness, and that stillness under chaos is control. His discipline becomes a form of psychological dominance. Enemies sense it. Allies rely on it. Leaders depend on it. Most civilians crumble under pressure because their minds never learn to override fear. But the soldier with internal discipline has practiced pressure over and over until it became familiar, until it became normal, until it became a place where he thinks more clearly than the average man thinks in comfort. This is what makes disciplined soldiers terrifying to face. Not their strength, not their weapons, but their calmness. Their precision, their refusal to break mentally. Discipline has become their blade, and they wield it with mastery. Every level of mastery demands a price, and this level, the level of discipline that bends chaos and silences fear, charges more than most men are willing to pay. A man pursuing this discipline loses comfort first. Comfort becomes the enemy. The bed becomes a trap. The heater becomes a seduction. The easy path becomes a threat to his progress. Then he loses distractions. The mind has no room for noise when it's being trained for clarity. Eventually he loses people too, not because he pushes them away, but because they cannot keep up. They don't understand why he holds himself to impossible standards. They don't understand why he sacrifices relaxation for repetition, pleasure for procedure, indulgence for intention. They fall behind as he moves forward. The path narrows as the discipline intensifies. The crowd thins. The conversations change. The soldier becomes different. Not superior, but sharper, quieter, more focused. And that difference creates distance. There are nights when the cold feels like an enemy, days when the silence feels heavy, moments when the burden of discipline feels like too much. But he persists, because he knows something civilians don't. Weakness is always waiting, and the moment you stop fighting it, it takes back everything. This level of discipline isolates, it challenges, it demands, but it also transforms. The man who pays this price becomes one of the few who can stand firm when others fold. You've seen it before. Everyone has. A veteran walks into a room and the air changes. There's no announcement, no loud presence, no swagger, just a quiet gravity that pulls attention without trying. That's the aura of a man who has fought the mental war for years, a man shaped by discipline so deep that it becomes visible without a word. People instinctively recognize authenticity. They recognize strength without display. They recognize a man who doesn't bluff, doesn't grandstand, doesn't need validation. That's why rooms go quiet. That's why conversations soften. That's why respect forms instantly. Fear-level discipline creates this aura. It's the presence of someone who has suffered without breaking, learned without boasting, endured without complaining. His posture is calm, but not passive. His silence is heavy, but not hostile. His energy is controlled, but not weak. It's the aura of a man who could lose everything external and remain unchanged internally. Civilians can imitate confidence. They can fake intensity. They can pretend to be tough. But the aura of a disciplined soldier cannot be faked. It comes from repetition, pain, pressure, and years of internal refinement. People feel it because truth is always felt more than heard. Once a soldier sharpens his discipline to this degree, it changes not just how he behaves, but how he sees the world. Life stops being casual. It becomes terrain. Every environment is read before it's entered. Every person is assessed, not out of paranoia, but out of instinct. Every situation is broken down into angles, risks, and opportunities. This military lens never fully turns off. Even in civilian settings, the mind stays alert. He doesn't just see a room, he sees exits, blind spots, patterns of movement. He doesn't just meet people, he notices tension, posture, energy, intent. He doesn't just set goals, he creates missions with strategy and timelines. Civilians drift, soldiers scan, civilians hope, soldiers prepare, civilians react, soldiers anticipate. This worldview makes life sharper, clearer, harder, but also more controlled. Nothing surprises him easily. Nothing overwhelms him quickly. Nothing manipulates him subtly. His awareness, built through discipline, becomes a shield he carries everywhere he goes. Fear-level discipline reveals one truth that civilians struggle to accept. You are not competing with anyone else. Not with teammates, not with peers, not with enemies. The only competition that matters is the man you were yesterday. That man hesitated. That man doubted. That man made excuses. That man lived with softness in places that needed strength. A disciplined soldier wakes every day with one objective: defeat the previous version of himself. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't chase recognition. He doesn't chase comparison. He chases improvement, internal, silent, daily improvement. And when a man competes only with himself, he becomes unstoppable, because no external obstacle can match the resistance of internal weakness. And once you conquer that weakness, the outside world becomes a smaller threat than it used to be. Fear-level discipline isn't about perfection. It's about transformation. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't break when pressure rises, who doesn't fold when storms hit, who doesn't collapse when the world feels heavy. It's about turning the mind into a fortress, the soul into a weapon, and your presence into something others feel before you speak. This level of discipline doesn't just earn respect, it commands it. You become the kind of man chaos looks at and steps aside for. If this message hit you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to go even deeper, watch the next video I left for you right here. Stay disciplined, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.